Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Digital Leader Show, where we talk key issues and news at the intersection of business and technology in hopes of making you a better digital leader. Hosted by Dan Goodstein and IRPA AI, a professional association, media and peer research network, providing education, networking and advice to over 130,000 global members on automation, enterprise AI, and digital transformation. We're live Wednesdays at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific on LinkedIn and YouTube, and the audio recording is available wherever you get your podcasts. And now, here's your host, Dan Goodstein.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Digital Leadership. Gated internet and digital rights, plus headlines for digital leaders from the world of enterprise technology. I'm joined today by Chris Surdak. He's a senior IRPA AI advisor and analyst, award-winning author, and former White House Chief Transformation Office advisor. Mr. Surdak, it's been a while.
It has. Welcome back to 2026. Hard to believe.
2026. It's been a busy few weeks. We were supposed to talk last week. I screwed that up. I had some conflicts and things. So this is our first show of the year. Is that right?
I think so. So, welcome to the next quarter of the century.
Yeah, exactly. Lots going on. I guess it's better in a way because a couple of things have happened over the last couple of weeks that are worth talking about. A couple of big conferences, industry conferences and things. So, let's before we get to our main topic, let's start with some industry headlines. Well, the stock market was not happy with tariff talk again yesterday.
Well, but
right.
it dropped like 900 points, I believe.
Yeah.
Which, okay, it's a drop off, but I mean, we don't see the days of these massive swings back and forth anymore. 900 points was a lot back when the NASDAQ was 10,000. It's kind of not that much when it's like wherever it is these days. So, between that and what was it, like 8 people from Europe, eight troops from Europe landed in Greenland and stayed for 36 hours as a counter invasion force, and then they left. So it's who knows what's going on. But I think that in 2026 we can expect even more disruptive type stuff than we saw in the last 5 years, 6 years.
Yeah, if nothing else, just for the optics, Chris, right? It's all about the optics.
I mean, love him or hate him, I think Elon Musk, like last year, he came up with some new rule that like the most ludicrous response is the most likely, or whatever. So whatever's going to generate the most social media traffic is the most likely outcome.
Yeah, exactly. So let's see. That happened on the jobs front. Got some news from December. The numbers came in from December saying that private payrolls actually grew last month. So that was before the tariff talk kind of helped ease some labor market concerns. But there's some interesting numbers in this report from ADP. So it says that U.S. companies added 41,000 jobs last month after a decline in November, but the ones that occurred, the losses were in the areas we care about, Chris. So professional and business services actually lost 29,000 jobs. Information services lost 12,000 jobs. The gains were from education and healthcare, and Davos is going on right now, and no surprise, all the talk is about AI, right? So they're talking about AI being the main factor behind about 60,000 U.S. job cuts last year. Amazon, Salesforce, stuff we've talked about here, and more and more anxiety from workers. So the guys in Davos are talking about, potentially 40% of jobs being affected by AI. A study done this past week from Randstad said that 80% of employees are concerned about the effects of AI on their jobs. So it's likely the number is somewhere in between those two, but either way makes for some interesting workforce drama.
So I was apparently I was actually being talked to about coming over to Davos, but we couldn't get my security stuff done in time. Maybe next year. You wrapped up a whole bunch of stuff there, but I also saw in conjunction with about 41,000 job growth last month. You have to remember that's December. That's where seasonality, the holiday shopping season, generally brings in a couple of million additional people to work. So that's, I think, partially indicative of we do a lot more shopping on Amazon than we do at malls. And so that hiring drops off substantially. But there's also, as you mentioned, like a structural piece there. A lot more of the job losses in high-paying, professional, productive type roles, as opposed to, and it's not to imply like education or healthcare are not productive, but they are more service-oriented and not output generating, right? So that's a significant challenge. We're seeing economic growth in parts of the economy that aren't necessarily productive. And that's a real challenge. The other thing, I don't know if you saw this, but both Macy's and then Delta Airlines just made some releases for their annual reports, and they both noted a dramatic increase. They're saying that tremendous stagnation in their business in general. And the only place that both of those companies are seeing any growth is in the premium side of what they do. So this leads to the K-shaped economy, where if you're uber rich, you're in the top 5%, you're living life on easy street, you're taking exotic trips all over the place and so forth, and buying really expensive stuff. And if you're at the lower end, you got nothing. And you're on the verge of bankruptcy, et cetera, et cetera. And I mean, that's very worrying. It's great if you're in the top 10% and you can stay there, but for everyone else, there's a severe pinch going on. And I think it's being reflective in a lot of the numbers that are starting to come out, reflective of what happened in 2025.
Yeah, and that's the other topic related. Some of the stuff I'm seeing coming out of the Davos conference, right, is this building discrepancy between the top and the low, right? The kind of middle of the road being eliminated. So and AI being one of the driving factors there. So yeah, there's a lot there. There's also some other conferences going on. So or have gone on. CES wrapped up earlier this month, and kind of what I expected. I mean, it seemed like most of the conversation was around kind of the same stuff. AI powered everything, devices getting slightly better cameras and stuff, but the one thing that kind of jumped out at me was the agentic AI stuff kind of coming to front and center, that and kind of digital twins being something that's talked about more mainstream than us just talking in these roundtables that we do, Chris.
Digital twins is back again. That's so 2018. The 2029. Wow. Yeah, digital twins. I was doing digital twins of the space station back in 1993 with mathematical models and stuff. It's not new. It's just new marketing. And then, CES, I saw people are now starting to wonder if we should put agentic AI into our children's Barbie dolls. My general response is probably not a great idea if they're convincing kids to like kill themselves and so forth. But and then I saw some spoof, which was it was legit. Someone had come up with an AI enabled pen or something like that. So you're going to see it everywhere. Does it actually mean anything? Is it anything beyond branding? Probably not. But it's Sadia. I was just commenting on LinkedIn earlier today. He was making the comment that AI is not going to make it, so to speak, if more people don't adopt it. If that's not an admission of guilt, I'm not sure what is. And then I don't know about you, but my computer at home just got the update pushed, and now I have Copilot all over my machine, and I'm trying to kill it off as quickly as I possibly can. And I think it's down 700 different sub menus to find out how to turn it off. So it's they're not generating revenue. They're burning, I saw something like $2 million an hour or something like that in OpenAI. At some point, you got to say, okay, we can't do this anymore if we're not making any money at it. And I've been predicting for several years that 2026 was going to be that year, and I'll stick to my guns on that.
Yeah, so there was some survey data that came out at CES saying 77% of global enterprises and 92% of large enterprises have shifted AI strategy from efficiency to growth, with a quarter of them expecting a 10% revenue uplift in the next year. 35% organizations are making agentic AI their top priority. And Goldman Sachs came out saying that, I think this is to your point, Chris, that large tech companies might only realize about half the profits that they need to justify their current AI capex. So that's alarming. It's funny, the things you mentioned, and there's few things that scare me more than a AI Barbie. I just watched that Twilight Zone over New Year's about the talking Tina, the doll. Have you ever saw that?
Was it Freddy, or what was the little toy kid in like the horror movies from the 90s? You're just asking for trouble.
I mean, my daughter already has a doll that does like eye tracking, and it like the head turn. It's really weird. Anyway, don't want that. It's interesting too. I've been on some calls over the last couple of weeks where, for the first time that I can remember, AI early on was, critiqued as being kind of voodoo-ish, the black box thing. But it was still exciting and aspirational and innovative. This month I had my first call where somebody was talking about AI in a business use case context, not just you and me talking context, where AI was used as an actual negative, where they were like, I don't want everything to be AI, right? There's certain things that just, don't need to be AI. And in fact, there was a second conversation that was related to that one. I can't mention the company, but they were basically saying they're not sure they want to use AI in their messaging anymore, even though they do have an AI solution, because it's perceived as less valuable than it used to be, right? In a world where people have Chat GPT at their fingertips, something that's not human driven, that's AI created, is being perceived as cheaper than higher value.
Inevitably so. And not to toot my own horn, but I've been saying this for 12 years. Like I'm tired of pointing out what to me strikes me as the blindingly obvious. But we saw this with RPA, we saw this with cloud computing, we saw this with all of these things. And we persist in refusing to learn from our history, so we're doomed to repeat it. I think I actually, I come off as super negative to AI. I use it actually quite a bit, but I use it to check my work. I use it as a overeager, widely read, pathologically lying research assistant. And as long as I contextualize it like that, it's not bad, right? When my company, we came up with we redid our whole business plan. I said, okay, have ChatGPT cut down the word count by 20% without changing context. It did it, and it did it. In much of the work, it did a great job. And some other key areas, it completely screwed up. So you always have to babysit. You always have to double check it. But the idea that we're going to have free range agents running around, like making decisions for you and so forth, is beyond preposterous. So the use cases, this is just, again, as you and I saw with RPA 6, 7, 8 years ago, in specific use cases, in specific ways, it can be very useful. If it's not the right use case, it's going to destroy value. It's going to mess up what you're doing. And there is no possibility of an ROI. And as long as we're being very upfront and sober about that evaluation of the proper use case, you're going to get some value out of it. But it's a tiny fraction of what people are proposing these days.
Yeah. NRF going on, and the big news that came out of that was a partnership between Walmart and Google around AI, building a shopping integration with Gemini and a new protocol aimed at becoming the retail industry standard for AI agents. So what's interesting about this is a couple things. First of all, I can't imagine a partner where Walmart, Shopify, Etsy, Wayfair, and Target are all using the same platform, which gets into, how do you differentiate and all those interesting questions. But it's already being rolled out. It's been developed according to Google with all these stores, retailers, and about 20 other lesser known smaller retailers. And the idea is to create a native checkout button within Google AI mode and Gemini products, where the LLM will actually be able to complete the checkout process for you without ever having to go to their website, but also upsell you, also make suggestions on other things that you can buy. So you got a couple things there, right? You got the AI experience thing, AI making purchases, AI disintermediating, where you don't even have to go to the retailer's website, never mind their store, trying to make upsells and stuff. But you also have this huge disruption potential for the customer experience agency as a whole, right? I mean, if this is going to be, native on websites that every consumer has access to, or not even websites, on the web, with using tools that every consumer has access to, that's a big shift.
I have a whole other problem with this. Okay, we're going to make it dramatically easier for you to spend what little money you have when you can't get a job. If you do have a job, your salaries are going up like 1% a year when you're facing 20 to 25% real inflation. This is squeezing blood from a stone. You're laying off all kinds of people, but then you're trying to get them to spend money. At some point, this doesn't work, and I don't understand how people don't get that. It's like, and I worked for Dell and so forth, which is all about cost cutting. You cannot cost cut your way to greatness. So, you can stay alive, you can be more efficient, but it's not making you more effective. And those two things are generally mutually exclusive in the business world. So and you mentioned a little while ago, well, people are now trying to improve improve revenue, not just cut costs. I'm like, if you're not growing, you're dying. And so I feel like a lot of this is trying to get blood from a stone. Your customers can't get jobs. They're losing their house. We have consumer debt higher than ever, and you're going to get them to consume more. At some point, you got to say, we got to like address some serious problems here. And the way you're using the technology right now ain't helping.
Well, not only are they going to make it so much easier to spend the money, but they're revamping the early drone delivery program. So Walmart's going to be expanding drone deliveries starting in LA and Miami. So Chris, look up, man, when you go outside.
Well, I mean, I have my drone, so apparently I got to start engaging in anti-drone warfare in my own front yard. Great, so I can get more crap even faster. Is that really giving me a better experience? Is improving my life? One of the challenges of constantly improving in this way is that we're programming people to expect it. I don't know. Do you remember when Prime first came out? People were like, no one in the world is going to want same day delivery. That's ridiculous. Or when FedEx came out, who needs a letter overnight? That's insane. It'll never work. And now you just build that expectation on people's parts. And what do you mean I have to wait a day and a half to get something I want? So be careful what you wish for.
I've always been a supporter of it, but I got to say, I finally drew the line myself as a consumer with overnight delivery. I'm like, I don't need it that badly that I can't wait until tomorrow afternoon The overnight delivery thing, I'm like, I don't want some strange who, by the way, they're in like personal vehicles, right? Showing up to my door in the middle of the night. I can wait till 3 p.m. the next day when the big blue truck that smiles at me comes down the road. But yeah, it's that and as a technologist, I think this is amazing. But from the practical standpoint, this whole Amazon can open your garage door or your front door and leave a package in there. I mean, I guess I'm fortunate. I don't have the pain of it. I'm in the suburbs and thankfully don't have an issue with people stealing packages. I guess if you do, it's a necessary evil. But yeah, man, I draw the line at overnight deliveries and somebody opening my garage that I don't know.
Well, I've helped build these algorithms and make these systems and all that kind of stuff. So I know what we're doing. But a very direct example, I think it was last week. I needed a part for my motorcycle, and so I'm on Google and I'm looking it up and where can I get it. Then I hop over to Amazon. Instantaneously, there's a deal on not the part, but the tool you need to install the part, and you can get it same day and blah blah blah. I mean, the level of surveillance that's going on is staggering, and we all just kind of whistle past the graveyard as it's going on. It's great because, okay, I got the tool that I needed and the part that I needed and probably saved 50 cents. It's hugely convenient. But at what point can you turn that, and this is a rhetorical question, can you turn those to actually make you buy stuff that you don't want or don't need? Of course, right? And that's what the companies are doing all the time. So the idea that I'm also going to give up personal agency on making the decision on those things where I'm already being manipulated to buy anyway and hand it to an agentic AI that's going to buy on my behalf. What are you going to do when you throw your agent out there and you get 400, what is it, cinnamon roll, the new toy that like my one daughter wanted. Yeah. You get 400 cinnamon rolls delivered to your door because the agent went nuts, and all of a sudden, your bank account is zeroed out and your credit cards are toast. What do you do then? And it's not a question of if, it's a question of when.
Yeah, I'm on the fence on that one. I mean, these are not new problems, right? They're old problems with more access and more scale than they used to, right? I mean,
old problems amplified.
Right, amplified. But I'm always I always get back to the gambling example. Like, should gambling be illegal, right? But I think what happens though is that it's moving so quickly. The access is so good that it's moving at a pace where people can't become educated and keep up with it. Like I noticed even in my own Amazon, because I always have an order coming to me at all times. Now there's like a blue add this to my order button. So you don't even have to check out anymore. It's literally making recommendations and it's a single click to add it to an existing order that's already coming. No checkout process. Amazon got some heat over the holidays. They've got a new AI feature that they're testing out where based on what you're shopping for, there's a buy for me feature that was purchasing goods from third-party websites. So these are people that are not even on Amazon, not Amazon Marketplace, not Amazon fulfillment. These are completely separate third-party businesses that never signed up with Amazon. And Amazon's AI was placing orders on behalf of Amazon customers for these people, which, at first glance, I'm like, that sounds great. Why would they complain? But it was making mistakes. And so now you have a vendor, small mom and pop business with a bunch of cancellations on orders that they were even market or promote and couldn't fulfill.
That's the implicate. At the very beginning of my career, you'd make a nut that had to go on the spaceship and you allowed a thousandth of an inch of error in the design. But as you accumulate those errors, failure is mandatory. It's just a question of time. And now we're doing things at scales of trillions and billions and so forth. So I mean, when it goes wrong, it's going to go horribly wrong for a lot of people. And that's just math. I mean, there's no way around that unless we build in a degree of resilience in these systems that prevents that. And I don't see a lot of people being, very cautious about that. The EU just released another set of AI guidelines and so forth. And I'm going through it, and a lot of people are talking about it online. And I say, the worst thing you can do is implement rules or laws or regulations that are unattainable and unenforceable. And that's exactly what they're doing. It's like, so I'm not really, again, I think a lot of cold water is going to be thrown in the face of people in 2026. A degree of reality is going to come back to this. It's going to be wonderful for a range of use cases, but not nearly the number of use cases that we need. And someone's going to have their Sony moment, or their, when something goes horribly wrong and it really hurts the company. We're going to have 3 or 4 of those happen this year before I think people are going to say, whoa, maybe we need to think this through a little bit more clearly. We'll see.
I actually am at a new point. Maybe it's cynical, maybe it's revolutionary. I don't know, but I think we're at the point where it's almost like we don't care. And I'm not saying it's a good thing, and I'm not saying that there's not downsides, but I think the way these companies look, Amazon in this example, they look at it as the upside is so tremendous that we'll deal with what's the term we used to use? The digital exhaust. We'll deal with the digital exhaust, the lawsuit, those issues. We'll deal with that stuff later, because the potential upside is just so huge. I mean, you see what's happening for Amazon to start going to third parties that had I guess these are like Shopify stores, local merchants or whatever, and start putting orders. And even if they got, a whole bunch of returns, they don't care, because they're just printing money. And they'll figure out how many souls they affected later on. But that's the problem, right? There's just little checks and balances, which is a good segue. I love good segues, Chris, to our main topic today, which is the age-gated internet and digital rights. So bear with me here, because when I spoke to my colleague over here about doing this topic, she goes, "Are you really going to do an entire episode about porn?" and I said to her, and I laughed a little bit, because that is the first kind of implementation of a lot of this stuff. But by the way, it's the first implementation of a lot of technology, right? I mean, the internet, video technology, right?
Every technology we know of. The Gutenberg press, when we brought Chinese printing press technology to the West, the first thing they printed was Bibles, the Gutenberg Bibles. The second thing they printed was porn. And this is true of nearly every communication technology humanity's ever come up with. We first do religion, and then we do porn. That's just the way it is. So it doesn't surprise me in the least.
So that was that's what people kind of see this as. But if you really look at some of the laws, regulations, and conversations that are going on, though, it's about more than that. It's about access to quote unquote harmful online content. And, you get into this debate again, which is a different conversation, but what is deemed as harmful, right? Is a website about, what's that?
It's in the eye of the beholder.
Right. So now you're restricting the internet based on what whoever is in power or whatever entity decides, is harmful. And as we've learned about, in our own US politics here, for anybody not in the US, like there's literally states that are banning books right now because the children's books, because the children book is in theory projecting an idea that state doesn't want, projected. So when you're getting into these level of niche rights and restricting access to things, that's a book in one state. Imagine restricting that information across the web, and it's already being implemented. So half of the states in the US, plus the UK and Australia, as of the time of me putting this together, are rolling out laws that are requiring age or ID verification for access to porn, but also anything that they deem as a harmful online site, which could be, depending on the government, hey, you're doing protests, right? You're doing, it's violence, it's gaming, it could be any of these things, right? And they're requiring, here's the crux of it, they're requiring often the use of a third-party service that's going to collect this data, your ID, your face scan, or whatever. Can't imagine there's going to be any issues with that. I knew that. I knew as soon as I read that, I'm like, oh, Chris has got to co-host this show, because he's gonna jump all over that one.
I've just been in the space for a quarter of a century. It's not enforceable. I mean, someone's age verification. You click a button. Who really knows? You can always spoof that you're someone else. And then, as you're pointing out, harmful is in the eye of the beholder, and it's contextual. So the number of people, there's now millions of people that have an online AI boyfriend or girlfriend, and it's shown that this completely messes them up mentally. It messes them up socially. They get completely inured with whatever this fake AI that they think is like an intimate partner to them. They desocialize with actual humans, and these people are starting to kill themselves. So what harm is it that we're looking at? With porn in particular, there's it's harmful in the consumption, it's harmful in the creation. Is that like one in 5 American women under the age of 20 are on OnlyFans or something insane like that? Is that the kind of society we want? So it's performative, unfortunately. It's not really enforceable. And back to the EU AI example, like if you're going to make a rule that you can't enforce and no one can really make sure you follow it, it does more harm than good. So I think it's safe to say that this has really good intent. As a parent, I would like to control some of that stuff, but that's on me. The state shouldn't be controlling that for my children. I should be controlling that for my children. To get back to your point of, well, who decides what's right and wrong? Well, theoretically, that's my job if I'm a good parent. So lots of challenges there. It's not going to be effective. It's a little bit of a long time ago when TSA came in and threw in all these extra cameras and extra people at the airport. Back then we were calling it security theater. It was performative. I think this is a further example of that, because at the end of the day, you're not going to stop that stuff. Slowing it down arguably is a good thing, but we need to not convince ourselves that this is the proper way of solving the problem. This government-sponsored filtration, it's not going to work.
Well, way to bury the lead, Chris. You gave the solution before we even expanded on the problem. But no, you're right. You're 100% right. I mean, that is the punchline, right? I mean, at the end of the day, if you're a parent, you got to be more vigilant, and it's on you. And it's back to like the gambling thing, right? If you want to gamble and go to a slot machine once in a while to let loose a little bit, drinking, any of these things, right? Moderation, education, all of those things, but. Like you said, there is some good intent here, right? It's not just about, harm, what's obviously harmful, or, depending on the eye of the beholder, what the general population thinks is harmful. It's also just social media, right? So in Australia, it was social media under the age, I think it was under the age of 16. And so, there's some validity to that. I mean, there are some simple scenarios where you could say, okay, this is obvious. Let's just block this. But I think it's becoming less and less obvious what's harmful, right? And it has to do with culture. It has to do with, I mean, I'm sure that our friends in Saudi Arabia would have a different perspective on what, people in California think is harmful, right? So now you got to police it that way. And then there's that unavoidable problem, right? Of, hey, I'm in one state. What do I do when I move to the next state? It's a completely different policy. And part of the issue here, I think, and this is kind of gets back to tech strategy, if you will, the age gating regulation is kind of pushing the idea to me that the internet should be by default restricted. Right. It's that zero, what you guys call it in the security world, a zero confidence or what have you. Right. You assume the person is bad first. Yeah. Right. And then they have to prove that they're not. And then what's the burden of proof? Like today, it's a privacy issue. I don't know if I want to upload my license to watch porn, but at some point, how many hoops am I going to have to jump through to get access to information?
Controlling access to content has been around for a very long time. When you and I were growing up, we had to be 17 to go see an R-rated movie. And if you recall, an R-rated movie from the 80s pales in comparison with just like the latest series on Netflix.
Dude, I made the mistake of watching a PG-13 movie with my 10-year-old, and I'm like, PG-13 has changed.
It's not what it used to be. Exactly. So what we deem acceptable or not changes with time and culture. And to your point about Saudi Arabia, they have the exact same problem over there. Their kids are getting on WhatsApp, their kids are getting on Facebook, et cetera, and you can try to control it, but What's the worst thing you can tell a teenage kid is you can't do this or you can't do that. It makes it the first thing they're going to go and try to do, because who are you to tell me? And so part of that is they have to learn themselves. Again, I have a real problem with implementing things that, with the best of intent, they aren't operationally reality. You can't make it really work in principle. Well, no, you can make it work in your head. Hey, we'll just limit who can access this stuff. They have to click a button that says I'm 18 or more. But operationally, it just doesn't work. And so it sends completely the wrong signal to people that, again, it's just performative. It doesn't really work. And then inviting people to ignore any other controls you attempt to put into place. So there's no easy answer, but I think part of it is whenever you're going to put in legislation, regulations, any kind of controls like this, get beyond the emotional, I feel like we need to have this because it feels like we need it, and can this actually work in the real world? Because if it doesn't, then you're actually harming people more than you're helping.
So you got the privacy thing. Obviously, a lot of activist groups are calling this censorship, right? They're calling it a violation of privacy. Do you want a government or a third party? Which, by the way, these companies have proven that, as you've always said, Chris, it's not a matter if they'll be hacked. It's a matter of when they'll be hacked. I mean, people had, I think the entire user list of that Ashley Madison affair website was released at one point, right? So you got to assume that by default, it's going to be, exposed at some point. So that's not great, right? So then you have this issue also in the US of, how do you regulate this on a state by state how do you enforce this on a state by state basis? It's reminiscent of what they did with gambling, right? At first, gambling was illegal in a lot of states, so you had to be physically in a state to access online gambling sites. I don't know if that's still the case, but so there's some interesting tidbits though on a state by state level. So New York has a Safe for Kids Act that requires social platforms to restrict algorithmically personalized addictive feeds and nighttime notifications for users under 18 unless a parent opts in. So they cannot see algorithm-based feeds. They can only see chronological or non-personalized feeds. According to this, that was in 2024. We're in 2026. I'm not sure if that's been implemented.
I haven't seen it. Having given this presentation hundreds of times all over the world, can you give me a better admission of guilt of what you're doing? Reread that again. Read the first half of that again. It's
algorithmically personalized,
algorithmically manipulate you if you're under 18 without your parents' approval. So what do you think they're doing? Why do you think Fang is worth $20 trillion? Why can you not put down your phone and you're doom scrolling like 6 hours a day? They're flat out telling you, yeah, we're screwing with you, but we're going to make it so you have to give permission if we're going to screw with your 18, your kid under 18. It's hilarious looking at these regulations, and they're just outing themselves completely.
In Florida, the Social Media Safety Act effective last year, requires age verification for all users and bans accounts for children under 14. If you're over 14, it requires parental consent. Will be enforced by state regulators. I'd love to know if anybody's in Florida. I'd love feedback on how that's working. I mean, I like it in general. I think that's an easy line. Like if you're under 14, you shouldn't be on social media. If you're 14 to 18, it's kind of like I don't know. Is it still legal to get married under 18 if you have your parents' consent? I don't know. It's an old law, but something like that, right?
It varies state by state.
Right.
Yeah. I would love to see the enforcement agency that they have, and what are they doing, and how are they enforcing? What are the penalties if someone violates? And if there's no penalty, then what does violation even mean? Yeah, it goes on and on and on. If you say there's a speed limit and nobody follows the speed limit, and you don't punish people for going over the speed limit, is there really a speed limit?
Well, this was the issue with COVID with the masks, right? Where restaurants were like, who's going to enforce this? And they didn't have enough people to enforce it. Eventually, it became like the Department of Health, and they just made the penalties so high that the chances of you getting caught was very low. But if you got caught, it was going to kill you forever. So they just did it. So it's more like the fear of getting caught. But you reminded me of something interesting, which was actually this like coalition that all the pornography websites put together. And interestingly enough, I kind of agreed with what they said. They said that the problem with this policy is that it's not enforceable, to your point, in its entirety. So what's going to happen, according to them, is that all the big players will have to deal with the policy because otherwise they'll get shut down. And it's a major deterrent for people to go to the big sites. So people are going to start going to some of the smaller sites that fall under the radar of the regulators, which are actually less strict in general and more dangerous and promoting even worse dark web types of things. So you're inadvertently actually creating a worse situation because you're penalizing the big guys that are, maybe you don't think they're doing enough, but that are doing something, and you're pushing people to, the long tail of guys that, they're small enough. They don't care if the regulator's never going to find them, get that, go after them.
Say, how well did prohibition work in the 1920s and 1930s? How well did the war on drugs and just say no work out? And that does not mean you don't try, but again, something that sounds good in principle but is not enforceable in reality is just inviting more problems, exactly as you're saying. So you're gonna, if people are gonna consume this stuff, all of the vices, alcohol, drugs, you name it, there's some benefit in having that stuff somewhat centralized and under some degree of centralized control. And if you don't, you're just, you're going to have a whole bunch of Al Capones of porn out there making like their own little sites, to your point, that are going to be dramatically worse than anything else you have and are going to fall underneath the regulatory radar. And I'm sure you've experienced it. You're on the highway and, one speeder gets pulled over and everyone, the people that didn't get pulled over are laughing at them. And the person that did get pulled over said, hey, everyone else is going as fast as me. Why am I picked? So the selective enforcement thing never leads to good results.
Yeah, you have the enforcement issue, and then you just have like good old fashioned loopholes, right? I mean, in the U.S., I'm sure throughout Europe, it's fairly easy to just grab a VPN and change your location if it's a location based thing. There's browsers out there now that route traffics through anonymous nodes and obscure location and identity and stuff like that. And then, by the way, here's another one, back to that zero trust thing. If you use one of those browsers or VPNs normally just to protect your privacy, now you won't be able to access certain websites, because a lot of these websites, what they've said is, I don't want to pay the fine because you used a VPN and circumvented the system. So we're just going to pull out. I know some of the porn sites are not, we're just going to pull out of that state, or we're just going to pull out of this. So if you use a VPN for a legitimate reason, you just can't access our resources anymore. So you got that. But the Australian thing was a perfect example of what you're saying. I mean, literally within a week of that law going into effect, parents were reporting like they couldn't find their IDs, their licenses, because kids literally went downstairs into a pocketbook, uploaded the license, the ID, and got in. So it seems to me that it's good intent, like you said, good intent, but not completely thought out yet. And then you got Grok, just public platform, now just doing undressings of people. Like it's out of control.
Yeah, it is you're talking about the ID things. Like I would know nothing about trying to circumvent those kind of controls. I was never a teenager, right? I'm sure you weren't either. So it's not like there's any motivation for that. It's good to have good intent, but it needs to be backed up with the degree of practicality. Otherwise, you are undermining the authority that you've been given to have those kind of controls. And there's no easy way around it. But I think that's our challenge, is we slippery slope into what we hope are easy solutions, and we end up making harder problems. That's the agentic AI stuff in a nutshell. We're going to make it easier for you to shop. No, you're going to make it easier for me to lose every penny I have in my bank accounts and every dollar I have in credit. Well, I have 400 Barbie dolls on my front porch that I didn't really order, but someone did. So you have to understand the downsides of these things and protect against it. I always go back to my early training in spacecraft. A bunch of people were trying to get us to Mars. I was trying to make sure we don't blow up along the way. And it kind of makes you come off as a bit of a party pooper unless something goes horribly wrong. As a reliability engineer, I said the worst thing you can be is well known.
And it only gets worse, right? Because there's a report, the e-safety commissioner had a report. I don't know who that is, but e-safety commissioner reports that 80% of 8 to 12-year-olds trying to use platforms like YouTube and TikTok found a loophole, a way of getting around these before the ban even started. So I guess this is like parents proactively restricting stuff using software, whatever. 80% figured out ways to circumvent these bans, these things. And this is without AI, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who do you think is going to be better at using AI to get to access to something they really want to get access to that their friends are on or whatever? Who do you think is going to be better at that? The 80-year-olds who are legislating this stuff, or the 16-year-olds who had AI involved in their life since they were born?
It's not even close. And those kind of workarounds, there's tremendous motivation to make those workarounds. So they'll always be there. And then it gives people a false sense of security. That's the real challenge here, is the false sense of security that this provides. Then you become less vigilant, you become less active.
Oh, I don't have to parent because this thing is all I got. This thing's got my back, right?
Yeah. So you are actually enabling the bad behavior because you get people to lose their sensitivity to it, thinking that everything's fine because I turned on this monitoring thing, and no, it's
you know what the best was?
Long-term pain.
The best system was growing up when I had one computer in my house and it was in the freaking living room, and there was always somebody walking past my shoulder who could see what I was doing, right? I mean, that was or the telephone thing. I told my kids this week, I'm like, when I was a kid, if I wanted to call a girl, I had to call her dad on the only telephone that they had in their house and talk to him before he would put me on the phone with the girl that I liked.
Yep. Well, I mean, it was a hardline phone on the wall in the.
They knew what room you were in, right?
In the kitchen with a 20-foot long extension cord, so you could sit at the far end of the dining room table, and you're talking to your girlfriend while mom's making dinner 10 feet away. I mean,
you could hear at least half the conversation and use her own internal algorithm to figure out what was on the other half of the conversation.
I had the wooden spoon smacked up against that headset more than once. So I mean, it's active participation. It's this is when we're talking specifically about children. We can't treat children like they're a Birkin bag. They're not there for content on Instagram. They're your kids, right? And you have a responsibility to raise them. It shouldn't be easy. It shouldn't be convenient. It should require attention and effort. And things that take away from that and give a false sense of security, it's just a recipe for disaster.
Yeah. Crazy. Well, good show, Chris.
There'll be agentic AI babysitters coming out any day now, and it'll be fine. Don't worry.
You won't even have to talk to your own kids anymore. That's okay. Interesting stuff. I thought this was a very interesting topic. It hits business, it hits technology, it hits humanity. So I think it's interesting. We'll keep an eye on these regulations and how they play out. If you know of any tools or technologies out there, or you have any feedback on how they're being used in your particular location, definitely let us know. If you're looking for help or advice, Chris and the team run really great workshops and feedback sessions, advice sessions. So let us know. And if you're on the vendor side and you're looking to promote something that you're doing, we've got a bunch of vendor subscriptions available, IRPAai.org. In the meantime, we'll see you next Wednesday. Thanks, Chris.
Take care, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Have a great week. Take care.